Hey everybody, John Spiokli here with my dear friend Jamie Yoder for our next iteration of Growth Innovator Series. Jamie, hi, great to have you.
All right, thanks, John. Great to be here. Always fun.
Yeah. Well, you might classify me and Jamie as just a couple of dull guys because we've always both been fascinated by insurance. It's one of the great things that I believe separates us from the animal kingdom. The ability to absorb risk as a society and as a species is really, really important and really changes the nature of all of our lives, whether it's from burial insurance, health insurance, mortgage-backed securities, you name it. It's really one of the great inventions of mankind. And Jamie and I have had the good fortune of working together for many years, looking at the impact of technology and insurance. And so I can tell you now what I hope you'll get out at the end of this, which is that we think insurance is a fantastic place for anybody to look, because what's happening in insurance, we think largely will happen to all industries as the world becomes more computable. That will be going from a world of automation to a bionic world, which is a new mix of people and machines. And we also will, in many instances, be going from assess and mitigate, assess and pay, to predict and prevent. And that's a very different world in terms of insurance. So let me do a little bit of a setup here, and then I'll give you an introduction of my dear friend Jamie. Right here. I've known Jamie forever. I think of him, for those of you who remember Dick Clark, God rest his soul, the man who never aged. That is Jamie. I think it's a combination of good living and good eating, and in a blithe spirit, which he has. So I've known Jamie for many, many years. We started together at Diamond. Before that,
it depends on what you define as good living, I think. Maybe. But,
well, everything's relative. And Jamie and I worked together for many years at Diamond Technology Partners, then at the time at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and then he went over to be president of Snapsheet, a leading intelligent claims management and service organization, and is now president and general manager of North America of Sapiens, a leading technology platform for insurers. So he has really got his finger on the pulse of the market, and is one of the smartest people I've ever dealt with, and one of the most fun. And as I say, does have a fantastic spirit. So delighted to have him here to discuss what we think is happening in the marketplace. Just to remind you, Manifold, we're a venture holding company. The way to think about us is more alpha, less beta, better liquidity. And what I mean by that is that we help small companies grow and scale quickly. We help large companies transform through three divisions: financial investment, venture, through studio building, and through consulting. So it's another whole conversation, but it's a fun place to deal with these transformations. Lots of interesting clients, everybody from healthcare to Chicago Bulls, and a number of startup companies as well. So, and we're headquartered here in Chicago, but sort of North American market mostly. The fundamental phenomenon I want to keep going back to at the beginning of these is this notion of computability. In 1938, when both Alonzo Church and Alan Turing, separate but simultaneously, came up with this notion of computability, that you could have an infinite read-write tape that could and the ability to with starting and stopping conditions to mimic any logical machine ever created. That was the beginning of computability. The world is getting more computable, and we'll talk about it in the context of insurance for sure. And it's very simple to think about. One is level of knowledge, as how well do we understand the phenomenon of interest? Can we categorize it? Can we correlate this with that? Can we say this causes that? Categorization, correlation, causation as levels of knowledge, and then level of digitization, how digitally accessible is the phenomenon. If it's high on both, you can compute it, like your credit score. If it's low on both, like interpretation of an art of a Jackson Pollock, it's not very computable. So that fundamental thing is happening, and those who understand this, if you can compute something somebody else has to do with labor, you win. And in this, I'd really like to go ahead, Jamie. Sorry.
Well, if you go back a bit, I was just going to just add one thing that I think is helpful as we go through it, and really to take this the law of computability and just to frame insurance in a different way. Like you and I have talked about this quite a bit. And I feel like we have to prove that insurance can be actually interesting and fun, given that's what, you and I like to talk about. So, but the, to put this in perspective, if I reframe insurance, like, everybody thinks of insurance, it's about the risk side. It's about, that which, can happen, and we pool it. But if I really reframe sort of what's happening in the industry and look at the computability, insurance is really, if we think about it as the outcome, what's the value and what's the customer trying to achieve, equals those deterministic plus the probabilistic. Insurance typically covers that probabilistic piece, and increasingly, what we talk about in computability, more of that probabilistic is becoming deterministic. So on the prevent and predict, right? I can, with IoT, with other things, sensors, anything else, I'm creating more that can be deterministic. At the same time, I can use levels of knowledge and insight to winnow down how granular and how I can view the probabilistic and the nature of it, all directed at the outcome. So, typically we only look at the probabilistic side, and the reality is when we think of it in that lens, I can do that for every line of business, every type of risk. And that's where we see the shifts in what's happening on everything we're trying to talk about, why information becomes so vital.
Yes, I remember, I think you and I were listening to, was it David Friedberg, who is the CEO of Climate Corp. And I remember he got up and he said that the thing that just blew, talk about geeking out, but it blew my mind, where he said, look, our strategy is the following. We take the probabilistic and make it deterministic, and then what remains probabilistic, we reduce the error term. That's our strategy. And and
he looked at it in the context of crop, and then the same you can do in the context of new manufacturing models, right? That go to 3D printing, or obviously in vehicles and in property, and new emerging risks like cyber and so on. So
really, and
the question is how do we participate in it?
Yes, and the better you have that information description of that reality, the more you can pick and choose your where you want to play, and just for those folks who don't know Climate Corp was a crop insurance company that insured down to 100 meters square, and they were so confident in their growth models they would actually pay a claim without ever just based on the growth model and the satellite data, without ever sending an adjuster out. And then they sold themselves to Monsanto for over $900 million, as Monsanto is trying to grab hold of more and more of the information stack around farming. Jamie, you were close to that. Did I report that correctly?
Yes.
Great. So this is a thing, my next door neighbor when I was teaching Harvard Business School was named Ben Kaczynski. Ben with two N's, and then R which was just an initial. And then Kaczynski. He wasn't the Unabomber. That was a different Harvard guy. And Ben was fantastic, and he had one of those offices that was just piled over with stuff. And if you asked him for something, you could find it. It was like almost geologic. But anyway, he and I wrote a paper ages ago, 1993, 4, something like that, basically saying, hey, if you think about organizations for a minute and systems as a set of cognitors, individuals and machines that have decision rights and decision capabilities, and that those decision rights are dynamically allocated based on context and competence. Context and competence. What's going on, and competence, how good are you at it? And we were inspired by fighter pilots, because even back then, modern fighter planes, sometimes the plane would be flying itself and the pilot would be worried about the weapon system, sometimes just the opposite would be going on. And so those decision-making responsibilities are dynamically allocated inside a fighter plane. And we thought, wow, that's going to happen all over. And the thing here, this is something Jamie and I have explored a lot, is that in the past, the mentality of automation is to take things out of the mind, out of the body, and put them into the machine. Put them in and let the machine take over, and then only if something breaks does a human intervene. This is more, hey, we can, just like in a fighter plane, we can dynamically allocate. And Jamie will get into it in a minute, but one of the things in Snapsheet was that the idea is not we're claims processors, but the claim is intelligent, and the claim knows what it's supposed to do. And the claim can make queries, and the claim can make decisions. And it's about setting the context for that. And we're going to go through a series of 6 principles around the bionic age that we think, we wrote this paper, which we sent out before, called Digital Darwinism. We think the fundamental implication of this is that competition evolves faster in this new world. But let me stop there, Jamie. I know you'll have some thoughts on this.
No, yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously we talked a little bit about it in the paper. I didn't realize you'd send it out, but I can never assume anybody's read it. But the digital Darwinism, and that's the point, right? Well, we always talk about a lot of emphasis on some of the techniques. People talk about machine learning. What we really talked about with the principles of the bionic age is it's really about how do you create an organization and operating model that is really a learning machine, right? And so and so in the context, and it kind of starts. It starts with that allocation of responsibilities, right? So if the object itself knows what it needs to happen, it can determine, can I do it myself, or do I need somebody to do it, and who would that somebody, who might that somebody be, and being able to do that appropriately. Well, that then allows me to evolve as I add new smarts into the other. It can actually dynamically determine and improve itself versus the other, right? We see that sort of mix of investments that people are making in automation. They tend to be projects. They tend to be these point solutions versus I'm continuously adding new capabilities and new means by which to essentially continuously evolve the process itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the ability, and this is true of dynamic symbolic processes as well as things, right? Things are getting smarter all the time. And I think the notion of, I actually think IBM had the right thing. They abandoned it too early, the notion of a smart planet or a smart device or a smart, whatever. And it's as simple as the, automatic vacuum in your home, like a Roomba, right? But from iRobot, all the way up to program trading in, financial services that, dark pools that, you have, contracts seeking exchange in the context of, a trading environment. I mean, so these concepts are really all over the place. And we have this slide here that goes from, this notion of just simply automating cognition or automating labor to bionic, this notion of two-way symbols, and really a new mix of people and machines in a dynamic way, not simply set it and forget it. For those of you who had the Ronco rotisserie chicken thing like I did, I actually ran through two of them. I love them. One of Ronco's better things, much better than the hair paint, which didn't work. I tried it once. So like that. What we'd like to do now is just get a little bit of a sense of where people are in terms of their organization's ability to deal with machine learning and artificial intelligence. So we're going to have a small poll here, and this is from a survey about P&C insurers. 2/3 of them think that machine learning is a big deal for them. Could you respond to this here? Is your business equipped to take advantage of the potential of AI and machine learning? All right. All right. So we're looking at a little over half think yes so far, 58, 56%. About evenly split, a little less than a quarter, about a quarter to maybe a no. Very interesting. The reason, the reason I think that this is super important to think about is not because I care about the techniques and God forbid my thesis looked at expert systems in AI back in 1984, 5, 6. So I was in kind of the second wave. The first wave of AI was like the 60s, second wave was in the 80s. And now we're here. I think it's here to stay. It's because so much of work is symbolic work. Or even if it's physical work, a lot of the differential productivity is in the information about the physical work, or about the science about the physical work, or whatever. And then you think about the simple way I think about AI and machine learning is it's scuba gear or power tools for the mind, and for the individual mind, and for the group mind. And if just imagine going on a construction site today without nail guns, without power saws and so forth. And that's essentially what you're doing if you can't take advantage of AI and ML. Is you're running a construction site where everybody's still doing hand saws, on all this stuff. So it's central. Jamie, I know. How do you see kind of AI and machine learning, coming through on insurance broadly, and then we'll get into some of our principles.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it has a huge amount, a huge opportunity and a lot of use cases across sort of the insurance. I think the way it's typically, like, as I've seen it deployed, so different than what we'll talk about with some of the bionic principles. I think the challenge that we have is that a lot of it's done in very, very isolated or in pockets. It's kind of like, there's a lot of little innovation projects that get done in point places that don't necessarily operationalize it in terms of how it actually may materially affect it. So you see great advances in little spots, like on fraud, or even in some of the risks, some of the risk identification and risk points, but not sort of as a systematic view, because it may not just be AI and ML, but that looks at, as you said, sort of power tools for the mind. Like we look at it, it's kind of that thing we've always talked about with information advantage. It's if I'm, it's how do I think, it's like Six Sigma, but for knowledge work, right? And if I think about that evolution, it's one of the things. It's actually, because I obviously just joined Sapiens. One of the things I was really drawn to, a product called Decision. It's actually the godfather of decision modeling. The point is that it's a power tool for exactly that. It's models the decisions that then you can actually plug in model, new AI and machine learning models that you have the visual representation of all the decisions that are made across the processes. You can now plug that into the models and allow that to embed directly into whatever processes you're doing. So it does allow you to systematically look at the decision process and say, how do I improve the speed and efficacy, and what new techniques could do it? Either what I'm doing, or can the model itself adapt and learn and actually improve the rules and logic of the decision over time. So
absolutely, yeah. And I mean, a lot of the certainly the past 20 years or so, a lot of the technology companies, people have talked about winner take all markets, and guys like Paul Romer have made those arguments. Interestingly, Paul Romer's now for regulation. He kind of wasn't 10 years ago, but that's another whole conversation. What I think is important to understand is, yes, certain things are winner take all markets. Most, not all, but most learning systems are incredibly sensitive to volume scale of input, right? Put more simply, how big's your data set? You're going to be smarter if it's a good data set, and getting a good data set is another whole conversation, right? But and so you look at something like Google Translate. Why is it the best translation system? Because they've got better algorithms, but they've also fed it more data through a combination of their Google Books thing and all of the pronouncements of the EU, which come out in over 20 languages every time. They fed that in, so the translation engine's that much better. To your point, Jamie, it's kind of to mix metaphors. If we're kind of pre-Cambrian, right? The very simple life forms are fraud AI and claims AI, but we can imagine kind of a post-Cambrian revolution as you get more understanding of big parts of the business, the customer environment, and just volumes of data. And I imagine those are going to be very, very concentrated markets. Oh, I think I have a problem with my internet here. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's see. Very good. Looks like we lost Jamie. So we'll get Jamie back in a bit. In our paper together, we came up with this notion of different bionic design principles. And again, it's how do you navigate in the context of business design when you have smart machines and smart people working together dynamically. And this first principle we just talked about was this notion of reapportioning cognition among people and machines. So the challenge is that most business analysis approaches have just to do with putting the information in, as I mentioned before, and you can think about laying out decision processes and so forth. It's not, hey, could we change the market? Hey, Jimmy, in such a way that allows us to dynamically allocate those things. And the simplest way to think about this is if there is a job to be done in a process, like in the case of Snapsheet, a claim, can you let the claim itself become intelligent? Can you let the contract become intelligent? And there's a lot of conversation about this in the crypto world with Ethereum and so forth, smart contract. And so if you take that same thinking to some of the processes in your organization and fundamentally organize them around the customer or around the task, not around the process of getting it done. Okay. I don't know. All right, let's get to how this works. In terms of the economics underneath this cognitive reapportionment, you've got a fundamental thing going on which has to do with being able to take unstructured things and making them more structured. So look at things like robotic process automation or algorithmic decision making. What you're essentially doing is taking stuff that used to be unstructured and used to be hard to deal with, and making it more structured and putting it into the operational activity. And meanwhile, the people migrate, the bionic decision making, the people migrate toward the unstructured and strategic part. So the system takes things and puts them into structured operational, changing the economics of that work. To make it super simple, one way to think about it is when you walk into a bank or any credit institution and you take out a credit form and you fill out that form, where do you live, how long you've been there, what's your income, so forth. That is then given to an algorithm and scores your credit. And so then a credit decision is made based on that. So you're taking stuff that used to be, when I was a kid, unstructured. That is, well, should we give this person a loan? All the way to completely structured, here's what you want. And I don't know, Jamie, structured managerial? Jamie, can you hear me?
You're cutting out.
Okay.
So I didn't know if you asked me a question, I did not hear it.
Oh, okay. Not important. Let's go on to the next one.
One thing I'll say,
friction.
John, can you hear me?
Yes.
So one thing I'll say, and it kind of goes back to the piece. Okay, so it goes back to the piece where you were. So there's a question there was a question from in the audience that, do you think any particular department would still be truly probabilistic based and reliant on human decision making? And I just want to explain one thing. I think within the function. So when we were talking about probabilistic and deterministic, the probabilistic, we're still talking about that. The deterministic is that which you can control. Probabilistic is that which you can't. So in the context of insurance, that's still going to be things like weather. That's still going to be losses tied to unexpected and uncontrollable events. So it's a slightly different thing what we were talking about. But to this point of the question, no, I think the reason why we talk about bionic is that all form of work will be divvied up in some continuum, some spectrum of the continuum of machine and human. So I don't think it will be truly probabilistic and fully reliant on human. It's more about the allocation of the work to the tasks based on, by design, not based on today, based on how our process works. So where empathy, creativity, and some of the validation, where people want sort of the validation, that sort of adds the human component as so it's that, whether it's automated or, it's informated, but the point is that contextual aspect's there. So I'm just trying to tie it back to the question that was asked in sort of two ways. So,
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. I think in addition, what happens is that when organizations can structure things, they generally migrate to taking that next level of risk or edge or whatever, and you can see that a good place to look for that is in Wall Street, right? There are certain things around, trading strategies and so forth that really have been automated. Like a lot of the trading portfolio stuff, is automated from the past, that used to have a human in the middle, is automated from the past. Where does Wall Street migrate to? Faster, more granular, more complex, you know what I mean? Because that's where the edge is. And so I think we'll see the same thing in lots of organizations. Removing friction from the entire ecosystem, not just the customers. Jamie, I thought that the whole conversation you and I had, around Snapsheet some time ago about, friction's not always where you think it is. And I was thinking in particular about, something simple as taking the pictures and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to explain that.
So, Snapsheet was sort of the pioneer of virtual claims, right? The really simple concept that if you get in an accident, rather than wait for somebody to come out and look at it and just look at it and go, okay, this is where I think there's damage. You start it with the pictures, and everything can move from there. And the hardest thing was, everybody said, well, okay, getting people to do it. And so a lot of people think, well, we'll give them an app and everything will happen. And, the reality is that, ultimately you need to be able to get it from anywhere in any way, any source. And once you have that information, it's also then how you guide them through the process. So claims is a great example. What every organization faces, it's really a party of many parties. So in order to actually handle a claim for a customer, tons of different parties outside of your organization are going to be involved, right? We tend to optimize the things which, our organization touches. We go look at customer experience initiatives. We still say, how do we control how we're responding to the customer? Meanwhile, there's these huge disconnects between what they actually go through at a repair or all the other aspects. And so, one of the, obviously the thing we looked at is you're continuously finding the friction, fixing the friction, and seeing, and oftentimes that found new ones. So, great, you found it. We found a way to, we can get photos from you in any different way. But oftentimes they may be at a shop and whatever it may be. It's not to get into the details of it, but ultimately, when you fixed one thing, something new would pop up as to why it didn't happen. And the ability to, sort of, fix that fast and actually sort of respond it, led to sort of, close to 100% adoption rate, where, we still saw people sort of pre-COVID, people kind of got the model of it still in like the 30%. A difference of, one, assuming that you have to find a way to make it work, and two, just I'm going to find the things that stand in my way and have the means to improve those quickly.
Yeah, and those, they're new bottlenecks, as you get into it, right? That you don't necessarily expect. This notion of innovate and integrate, don't start from scratch. I mean, the thing that that people talk about, doing in-flight missile maintenance, or changing your clothes while you're driving the motorcycle, or pick your analogy, right? I think that the reality at one level is very simple, and one level, but that same thing when you think about it's really complicated, which is that all of these things are embedded in a system, and you just explain some of that around claims and so forth. And so if you don't take that systemic view and think about how you're going to evolve things over time, you can't kind of stop everything and define it. And where it's particularly difficult with symbol work is that symbol work, when I think I've told you this, Jamie, when I was a kid, I used to play with mercury. I don't know where my parents were, but I would break thermometers and play with little pieces of mercury. And if you've ever tried to do that, which I do not recommend because it's really bad for you, the mercury goes away from you. You can't pick it up, right? It goes small.
Explain so much. Explain so much, John.
Explains a lot. I know. You also know me, right? Yes. All about the mercury. The notion of going after trying to standardize every piece of a symbolic system before you starting from scratch, is that you just chase so many definitions. So this notion of coevolution of where you are now to the new kinds of structures and so forth, and picking your shots as to what you're going to standardize, because standardizing simple things is not free. It's very, very different than the physical world. You say, okay, we're going to have, like they did at the Springfield Armory in Massachusetts, one of the first places they have standard parts. You can say, okay, we're going to have these standard parts, we're going to assemble them into this rifle. And when we sell you a rifle, you're part of a system now, because if you buy 3 rifles and one breaks, you can fix it from the other ones. It's very different with symbol work. I mean, you've lived it. I mean, what are you finding now at Sapiens in terms of, there's a lot of, you guys have a platform and worry this issue.
Yeah, and so I mean, 2 things, right? I mean, obviously we have sort of the platform, and it sort of involves the whole. But every insurance company is as every big company is sitting there with all their sort of core operations and what you want to do, and we, like others, and this is sort of where the opportunity sort of exists. Is we obviously built sort of a no code digital layer, because to me, we've talked a lot about orchestration or sort of the assignment piece and how work gets done sort of is kind of the brains in the middle. You have the decision piece where I talked about, we have a decision platform, and that decision modeling piece allows you to actually the decision, and then the intelligence is a lot of stuff we're talking about with AI and actually drive it. But that engagement layer sort of sits above it to say, how do I change the way we engage, and how do I change the way the work is done? And I can leverage a lot of those things that sit behind it, right? So, the sort of, in our case, the sort of no-code platform allows you to build journeys, takes advantage of any myriad of whatever your current systems are. So I don't have to replace all that, and I can start to actually build those pieces. But if I have those other layers in that I just talked about, then you're doing exactly what you said, as I can constantly evolve it over time. That's one level. If I go into the decision piece, the decisioning piece, one of the things that we've done, this is a use of AI in an interesting way, a new way, and we're going to talk about pick up the trash, a really non-elegant aspect of all, and that is it's just an automated logic extraction. So it just basically mines all the existing sort of COBOL or Java, whatever it be, creates a knowledge graph and basically creates a visual decision model that you can then change the rules, automate and the other, and plug that into that same engagement layer very quickly. We had one of the big insurers who has thousands and thousands of products that they've been trying to replace for decades, and the ability to very quickly go in and actually pull out all that logic in a way, not just these are rules, but really actually the logic in a way that they can then act on and actually deploy into how they can actually put that into the market and sort of change it. There's lots of opportunities by which to do that aren't in the same model that we've taken in the last decade.
Yeah, it's fantastic that you're at that point. I know that many years ago, there's a guy named Charlie Bachman who tried to do it. He left IBM, and the product didn't work. The idea was to do inductive analysis of the code base, and then I remember we used to write some stuff and some TI tools that were, they had uppercase and lowercase, computer-aided software engineering, uppercase being the higher level stuff, lowercase being the implementation. That kind of maybe worked on, Tuesday if you look sideways, but now, a couple decades, we really have those tools and they're so powerful, in terms of being able to make it work. So this notion of using AI to pick up the trash and exploit the stars. Our mutual friend, Chris Curran, I remember asking Chris a while ago, I said, Chris, okay, if we're just going to go start a company just to make it and flip it and whatever, what company would you set? And he looked at me and said, cleaning data for AI algorithms, full stop, done. Make data sets. He said, the data's so dirty. And now you start to see lots of companies out there doing it and spending a lot of time worrying about that base layer in terms of what we call here pick up the trash, right? And then the notion of exploring the stars, really doing things that you otherwise couldn't because of cognitive constraints of individuals or groups. I'm sure a number of our listeners know that this whole set of devices that we're on, the computer and the bitmap graphics that are putting us out there and all that other stuff are out. They're here because a series of scientists back in the 60s wanted to expand our ability to think as a group, right? Doug Engelbart, Doug Mega Knowledge Workshop, Alan Kay at Xerox PARC. They wanted to improve both the individual capability and the collective ability to deal with complex issues. This notion of exploring the stars. So AI really is at the leading edge of that to be able to expand the space that we can explore. And there's lots of places for that, right? Trading algorithms for sure. In drug discovery, right? There are people who are taking known compounds, problems, solutions, and they're finding much more efficacy of taking compounds that sat on the shelf that they didn't know, hey, that compound might be relevant for this disease state and so forth. Simply a search base too much for traditional methods. I know, Jamie, I know you and I have kicked this around a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, but this kind of goes, the stars piece people get, and the good news is you don't actually make, significant progress without that sort of, extreme goal, right? Like we had set the goal, we were going to be able to handle 100% of claims, virtually, and it all started from there, and then you sort of proved it behind it, right? That was kind of the Snapsheet world. but you also looked at, big carriers who look at it and say, we think 70% of claims will be can be automated, right? It's a bold, aggressive to be fully automated. It's an aggressive goal. There's a lot of things that have to happen to do that. But, a lot of times you see it because they apply it to a big project. They're like, okay, great. It's okay. The computer vision is going to be able to tell me and automatically tell me all the damage and everything else. The reality is this, there's a lot of little innovations you can actually do that make huge strides. I mean, that's where we kind of focused on, as we said before. And you got a lot of improvement, and it's a continuum over time. It doesn't just going to go to 70%, but they're kind of investing and approaching it like, oh, that's what this is going to be. With this one big breakthrough. And the reality is there's a lot of those things you're going to get. And it's kind of why we talk about the other principles, but there are obviously there's many of those, and those kind of draw all the attention. But the reality is some of those things we talked about, like automated logic extraction and, really simple stuff like, medical bill review and triage, like, have significant impact, and can't lose sight of those if we can put it into a structure that allows you to operationalize, the hundreds of those more readily versus the, that one big thing that, maybe puts you on the front of the, Wall Street Journal or something.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Well, I think, certainly in this. Yeah. Yeah. And we've got a request here to hear some cases from under each of those that we're doing. Certainly in using AI to pick up the trash and explore the stars. In drug discovery, there's, as I mentioned, the explore the stars part for sure. Also in reinsurance risk modeling, you see a tremendous amount of the use of sophisticated CAT models, catastrophe models, looking at things like agent-based modeling and so forth to try to understand the tails of the distribution and to help people think about the unthinkable. Jamie, I don't know if you wanted to add others.
Yeah, I mean, natural hazard risk scoring, high risk claims identification, right? So more of the predictive piece and understanding where things can happen. You see it on the property side. There's some Insurtechs like Planer, right? Who's allowing you to visually model and determine incidents inside the home, and others that are doing it on the outside of the home. Obviously, we were doing stuff in the vehicle space, and huge amounts there, and that's moving quickly over time. So that's a lot of the use cases there, and then obviously, as we talked about on the pick up the trash, even some of the stuff of being able to model the logic and then apply models, just things to that for things like liability determination, coverage determination, and very basic things, but allow you to actually say over time we're getting better and better, and I can triage that and feed it to no touch and more. You'll see the same thing with when you look at the risk side. Obviously personally you can do automated underwriting, small business. That's increasing in terms of the ability to identify a lot more data sources are needed, more modeling to handle more of those complex risks, but that moves at a pretty rapid rate.
Yeah, and I think that and we'll speak to this in terms of the next principle, this notion of the economic logic. I think one of the things to really highlight here, people throw around the term competitive advantage a lot, and there's this wonderful phrase, that Warren Buffett loves to use, what's your competitive moat and things like that. Well, one of the most sustainable, I believe the only sustainable long-term competitive advantage is a superior management system. So the only a superior management system that allows you to choose markets, execute in them, improve, divest, and so forth faster, better than anybody else. So I think that at the highest level, to me, that's the only competitive advantage, really. If you go down, take that down a level, and just what you're saying, Jamie, as you get that progressive learning, that progressive structuring of activities, and you use it to both explore the top end and fix the bottom end, it's very hard for a competitor to come in because of the learning issue. And I mean, this was first thought about or talked about analytically by Bruce Henderson, the guy who started Boston Consulting Group, with the idea of the learning curve. So, he documented early on that for airframe manufacturers, I think he was doing the work at Boeing, for that there was a fixed amount that the unit cost of each new airplane went down for every amount that went through the factory. You split that into two hunks. One was economies of scale, which is simply more through a cost base, and the other was learning effect. And so they would actually analyze the learning quotient based on volume going through the system. And I think we have the same thing in simple stuff, only happening even faster. So, for example, the marginal cost of somebody like Direct Line in the UK or Progressive here in the United States to do very specific underwriting for a micro market, was much better early than the Allstates of the world and so forth. And so they were able to do micro decisioning that would have cost Allstate too much money. Like, should we give this person with a motorcycle policy or not? I mean, Allstate was, kind of at super aggregate level, yes, no with humans, and Progressive was busy automating that. Well, that allowed them two things: better unit cost economics, and also to skim on risk, because they were able to, the weekend warrior like me, who was, might spend 15 grand on a Harley and, take it out 3 times a year, compared to somebody, some 20-year-old male who's got, a Ninja motorcycle, right? I mean, very different risk characteristics. What my brother, who is a physician who works in emergency rooms, they call those bikes donor bikes, because that's where they get their donated organs, is when those kids get into accidents. So very different risk profile. And so, Progressive was able to skim on both of those, right? Skim on the unit economics and skim on risk. So, I mean, just the bionic economics of, and then it's faster and you can do it with less capital.
Yeah. And so, and actually, because this one sort of sums up what the result of actually doing those and the others and what it can actually mean. And I think there's that question that Callian asked around, like to hear use cases of each principle. And the one thing I want to stress is kind of what we talked about, because we always see people that look at, then clients, they have projects that are doing an AI project, or they're doing RPA, or, intelligent process automation project, or customer experience project, or they're doing this. There's these little pockets. And to me, it's about the interconnectedness of how these things apply to structure. So we use the example of, the recent company, Snapsheet, as an example, because it essentially embodied all of these working together as an operating model. And the result is this point out, claims is an easy thing, but it's a function, so it's easy to see in context how these work together. But by applying these, the advantage and the economics is, one, change the model to be, like Progressive did to make it around, direct, sort of, you can actually do it. You can now change the economics to have behind it, switch from underwriting to marketing. This did the same in terms of, virtual claims, allowed it to sort of start. Now I can actually drive all the process of, efficiency through it. And then we do all the things around the claim, runs the process. The claim is the one who did it. And as we improved over time, can handle increasing, more complex claims, and you handle them more efficiently. So where traditionally you had, an appraisal process, an appraiser could do five claims a day. We're doing 25, 30. We had, an appraiser who could do over 50. Again, because the machine does a good portion, and when it does need a person, they have everything they need to do to make the decision and be done. And so that balance, and that just gets better over time, because the system, because the process can adapt, evolves itself as you get smarter in different pieces. So this point of, I'm on a different curve of productivity and performance is applied because of those things being worked in concert. Right. And what did it have to do? We had to remove the friction in order to get the information in. You had to remove the friction to actually make it, when somebody touches it, all the other things happen. Right. So all the stuff the iceberg, all the stuff that happens below the water. And then ultimately, and then all the innovations we put forth were a lot of little things like conversational, like silly stuff, like natural language processing to be able to determine total loss prediction and triage it accordingly. So little things along the way, well before full computer vision, may be applied to actually tell you this is the damage and automate it, right? Which is, further off. It'll happen on some pieces, but that'll go from a continuum 0 to 1% to increasing amounts over time, and the process will take advantage as it does. So I just wanted to address it because you have cases on each principle, and I think the real power is when these are brought together collectively.
Absolutely, and I just want to remind folks, we've got about 15 minutes left. For those anybody that has any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat area. Jamie and I will try to deal with them as we're going along. Jamie, I was thinking back to, you went over it quickly, but I'd like to pause you on it and correct me if I get any of this wrong, but when you said, notice a total loss, right? If through natural language processing, if you get that early in the system, doesn't that shortcut all kinds of things later?
Yes, absolutely. Right. So, I mean, I can get the vehicle to the right spot. I can get it towed and handled. It saves me money. It certainly is a much better customer experience. Yeah, you're saving all kinds. And you're taking weeks off of cycle time.
Yeah. So you're making a payment early. You're not using the resources later. The customers are satisfied. They're not out of pocket, and that routine, right? You're saving
hundreds and thousands.
Yeah, and the other thing is that what strikes me is just the different places where this occurs. So you may remember Phil Frank, a friend of ours. Phil's CEO of a little company called VUI that does intelligent voice interface. And the simple way I think about VUI is that they improve the quality of the conversation by expanding it in some semantic context and remembering more of the conversation. So you use a normal voice interface that you have to keep telling it the same thing all over again. This actually has a memory, right? And it also has better context. And they were doing some work with a mega retailer that is headquartered in the southern state, and and their biggest call center issue was photos, people calling up about their photos. And it turned out with this bionic approach, they were able to resolve 4 out of 5 calls in the voice-activated interface satisfactorily, not just people getting frustrated and leaving, but satisfactorily, and then 20% coming out to the human operators. So they were able to take 80% of the call volume and to do it. And the other thing, of course, now that they have it articulated, they really understand at a whole deeper level, why are people calling photos, right? What can they do in their process? What kind of services can they offer? What are people curious about? What do they need? What are the new product attributes? These are all articulated at a level and with a specificity and an ease that they didn't have before. They had some of it by reviewing call center context and recordings and so forth, but this took it to another whole level. So something as simple as call centers, just a completely different context at PwC, where I have been for a number of years. But PwC, they had this thing that was called a K1 analyzer. So part of their business in the deals business, they have to take tons of K1s and smush those all into one giant K1 because of lots of small partnerships sitting underneath a pool of capital. Well, they were able at the beginning of that to automate 30% of the labor of putting those K1s together through a combination of a clever adjustment to some data capture and some adjustment of open source semantic engines. And then they got up to 80-90% labor savings just in doing that task. Just as you say, there are all these, Bush Ford talked 1,000 points a lane, I think. This is 1,000 points automation, right? There's just all kinds of places you can find value. I'd like to get to some trends to watch, and this is the fun stuff. This is the stuff you and I do both in settings like this and also over martinis because we're a couple of dull guys who think insurance is exciting. And I think this whole notion. Let's start, if you will, with this notion of bundled insurance. That as products get more informationalized, and just for folks who aren't familiar with it. To me, the origin story in this insurance thing is Hartford Steam Boiler Company, and this is a company Jamie knows very well. And the notion at Hartford Steam Boiler, I think they're starting in 1883 or 1886, something like that. New York City, they're putting out big apartment buildings. Had huge steam boilers heating them. Every once in a while, one of those bad boys would explode. A lot of people died. It's horrible, whole routine. And so a bunch of landlords got together and said, can't we put together a company to insure ourselves and to do a better job? And the Hartford Steam Boiler Company was born. It was born originally as a company that was about prevention and keeping people with the product in use, the actual function of the product, and decreasing the risk. And I think today it's still true that there are about 2/3 to 3/4 engineers and about 1/3, 1/4 actuaries. So
and it's engineering,
2,000 actuaries, insurance types.
It's the point. It's engineering and data. How do I create innovative solutions in the combination using the engineering and data expertise? And the point, what does that change? So obviously the boiler example, going way back in the traditional sense, if you can keep a boiler from exploding and killing everybody in the factory, it's a lot better than just compensating for that loss. And they look at that same model across all kinds of things. You can think of it as vacation homes and churches and things that people aren't in that often have accidents. If I can improve performance and the uptime and everything else, like any of those models, back to our output equals the determinants of the other, it's performance backstopped by capital. It's not just the IoT model that some of the manufacturing companies look at and they say, we can improve your productivity, we can improve performance and your output. It's also still things can go wrong. So how do I actually put those things together and say we can control and mitigate it from happening in the first place, but also be there and trigger the event in the cases that still stretch beyond our control. So I think that's really important. That's a really key thing on the you said we call it bundle, but I actually want to unbundle that just a little bit. And that is because bundle, like people get reminded of that Progressive commercial, and that's not what I mean. It's not auto and home. Okay, it's really around contextual insurance. So insurance can be applied within the context of what you're already doing and using, right? So you're starting to see Tesla, Rivian, they're embedded in sort of the use, right? It's sort of tied within the use, embedded, kind of like what I talked about, metric insurance, where essentially the old Climate Corp example was a good one of that. When an event happened, they actually knew where the damage would be, where there would be a loss, and they could take care of it. You see the same thing. You can do the same with hotels in places that are, weather prone, right? So even though it's not direct, they may not have been hit by a hurricane. Their events are likely to go down, and so you can trigger events based on things like that. So you're seeing new creative uses because the technology and the data allows you to present the information and track it and apply it in new ways, and so. You'll see that sort of happening.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's a couple of questions here. One was about resources to look at successful implementation of ML in insurance. I don't have a book or anything for that. That's part of the reason we wrote the article, not that that's the be all and end all of it. But do you know of any, Jamie? I don't.
Honestly, when you look at it, I hate to say it, they kind of come in some of the providers that are actually doing some things that obviously, you can piece it together across it. We kind of look at the whole system, me and one of my former colleagues, Anand Rao, who actually at PwC leads the global AI group. We used to, as I said, the sort of who's looking at all the decisions that happen across the insurance value chain. And we'd model all those things and say, what are the opportunities where those are being improved? And we started tracking all the use cases, or in some cases, built our own models to actually improve it. I don't. He has that some of that, and so that's one good source. But it's but you can look at a lot of the examples of some some players that are doing some interesting things. And for us, is one for fraud. You have there's a number of Adadot is some really cool things that we work with on the life side and so on. So that's one piece. I'm going to go to there's another next question.
Yes.
Here.
Could I? Jamie's I think you're being too modest, Jamie. Jamie did a bunch of interesting stuff that's still up on the PwC website. Anand Rao's great. The stuff Jamie does and talks about, I would recommend is I think best, but he's too modest to say that. So models. No, we're talking. I thought you were going to move to Chuck's question about new models.
I broke up. I lost my connection.
New models and new tech.
Yeah, so new models and new tech. So
oh, sorry.
I'm on the left.
Can you hear me? I was saying new models and new tech.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? John, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
new models,
Yes.
new tech. So
Yes.
yeah, okay. So the trend here, to me, this goes to what we said, is insurance. This is why I actually think commercial insurance is so interesting. Is all the innovations that are happening in every other industry have a direct effect on the nature of the risks and what's being presented. So as manufacturing moves to more 3D printing and other forms, that creates new risks and new things that happen. Obviously, cyber, right? We see huge explosion sort of cyber. There's actually some startups in the cyberspace. They're trying to get a handle of exactly what the tail may mean and so on. But ultimately, that's creating new forms of risk. Energy goes from centralized to decentralized energy, creates a whole new path of risks, and a lot of other forms. And so, you have this sort of, I don't say disaggregation of insurance, but the ability to cover and specialize in those pieces, or to offer things, as I was just saying on the button, parametric or contextual insurance. That's creating new coverage because it may be usage-based, it may be, term-based, different things. And so it's not just the new risk itself, but the new nature of the risk or how that risk gets covered. And that's creating this means for people to, especially writers, to create, new products, new offerings, and the ability to, we say sort of offer those niches, which is kind of the second point, the middle point here. And that is, to scale those niches, right? To tailor offerings, tailor segments, tailor the experiences with the scale economics that John talked about.
Yeah, and you have things like hippo insurance. You put the sensors in your house. You get flood coverage. You get P&C coverage. You have does Tesla offer car insurance, right? Obviously GM, and in the context of OnStar. You have you also have folks that you and I know looking at connected coolers and then saying to restaurants, hey, look, do you want to buy continuation coverage? Because if your coolers are out, you're probably not. We can insure the food and we can insure your ability to do it. I mean, some of these things go back when I was a kid. When I was first married, we bought a bunch of service warranties from Sears, right? And then that kind of fell away, and now we have that intelligent connected product, intelligent connected home, and that ability to really ensure that. So there's both the new risks for the technology itself, like cyber, and then you have the new information layer enabling new kinds of offers. Can we just, we haven't got a whole lot of time left. If we just do a quick thing on the omnichannel and Technicolor client experience. I don't know about you, but every single business that I'm dealing with, whether they're calling it or not, are dealing with omnichannel. So whether it's, hey, look, I'm a food distributor, is my price the same across all my different touch points, the cell phone, the third-party distributor, direct to me, my salespeople, or any of the insurers, right? I want access everywhere, every time, anytime, anyway.
Well, and what's interesting on that one too, I'll take it one step further, is why you see a lot of the Insurtechs, a lot of them are really just MGAs, right? So this disaggregation of the insurance model is, they can do that, and they can, obviously they can get the underwriting. The other piece, they can build around experiences for segments, streamline that different piece without the cost associated with taking on insurance. And you saw, Metromile did this, where they started just as that MGA and then bought the insurance cover. Lemonade, similar in terms of the ability then to add the, take on the risk later. But the MGA model is really aimed at that, creating a new set of experiences and a way in which to offer it to customers. So it's taking that beyond just sort of the traditional omni-channel experience.
Yes. Well, we'd like to leave you with the idea of, definitely keep an eye out for these trends in the context of the bionic principles we talked about. What are these new models? What are the new technologies, whether it's covering a new risk created by technology like cyber, or using technology to extend a risk like Hippo. This notion of innovation and differentiation, that you really need to use the information about customer needs, channel, and so forth, bundled insurance. We didn't talk a lot about information advantage, but whoever has the freshest, newest information, whether it's your distribution channel or you or the end customer, they're likely to win. So you have to make sure that you want to be first in the demand chain. You want to have control of the edge of your organization, of your customer experience. And we just talked about omnichannel. So I'd like to thank you, Jamie. I hope folks get the feeling it's true. I wish we had hours together to talk about this. But I want to give you the rest of the story and then how we can use this material in our next thing. So thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate you joining us here. I know you're busy as can be as well.
No, thanks, John.
This illustration goes along with the idea of the tontine. I don't know if you folks know, there was an early insurance product that the French used a lot of to raise money, where they would basically take capital from people and they would pay out, and they would keep paying out till individuals, as individuals died off, the total amount. So let's say they brought in money for 100 people, they'd have a payout to those 100 people, and then if 75 survived, they would get a bigger payout, all the way down to the last person who lived getting the highest payout. This is a great way to raise money, which Louis XIV did for war fighting and so forth. The problem with this is that people got wise and started killing off other ones so they would get a higher payment. So it's very important as you think about these new capabilities and designs to think about the secondary implications and what they might mean. So that's the rest of the story there. In terms of our next our use of this, we believe in the Creative Commons idea, which is pass along, so you can share and share alike. You're welcome to use any of this material. And also, we're happy to have conversations, this conversation you want, if you have 5 or more folks inside your organization doing it. So last Friday at noontime Eastern, we'll have Paul Fahey, who is an old and dear friend who is the leader of Northern Trust's use of data science for investing. Clearly an area of interest to us all, both as companies and as individuals. So I hope that this has been useful to you and that you can use these materials. And I want to thank you one more time, and good luck becoming a growth innovator in your industry, and look forward to seeing you next month.